You know, folks, most people aren't really building a life. They're renting that moment, the moment for a future that may never really show up the way they promised themselves it would. The retirement, the paid off mortgage, the next raise. When things finally settle down, we push freedom into the future and we call it like the waiting room plan for, that's it. I did this for years without even noticing I was doing it. And today I want to show you why the trade-off almost never really pays off the way you think it would. It's kind of the promise we make ourselves. Somewhere along the line, though, most of us make this kind of quiet deal, suffer now. Let's just do that now. We'll cash it in later, work the job you've basically outgrown or having a lot of anxiety doing it because the pension plan and the later years that are coming up carry that debt. Because the raise is coming, the promotion is coming, the someday is coming, and deal feels actually responsible and even kind of noble. You're not avoiding life, you're actually investing in it, except the payoff keeps moving. Every time you get close to it, I call it like, the goalpost keeps moving. And here's kind of what nobody really tells you about, warns you about, or really discussed as, about that deferred lifestyle, about that system. The future version of you who's finally free almost never actually arrives, not because the money doesn't come. Sometimes it does. It's because freedom was never the kind of thing you could bank on for later. I kind of had to learn that the expensive way, That mistake is in the math. I used to think freedom was kind of a number. You hit that magic certain number. I mean, tell me who hasn't really thought about it. You think, okay, when I reach this goal, when I reach this promotion, raise, pay off this, somehow it equates back to a number. Then something is going to be magically fixed, You get that perfect life you're thinking, the more income, the more accumulation, more proof that I've earned the right to stop. I've earned that right to have freedom. That math is broken. It's almost broken for anybody who really actually believes in it. Freedom was never a future state waiting on the other side of a particular milestone or a goal. It's basically a design constraint you apply now, whatever income level you actually have. This is the part that changes everything once you actually see it. Freedom isn't just what's left over after you've built life, everyone expects you to have, with the whole society and the rat race wheel expects you to have, the rules you're supposed to follow. It's what you actually get when you reduce dependency, being, those obligations that come along with the complexity of life. These obligations a lot of times feel like we're prime example, you need the better car to get back and forth to work. I mean, yeah, we do need the vehicle, but there's so many obligations that are not partly really that what you want. They're obligated because of the system you're stuck in. And simply by having that mind shift, like, starting today, not someday, not the future plan, everything will be fine in the future. Small structural changes now, starting now, actually, start to produce more real freedom in larger financial ways than it ever will in the later years. I also believe it's because it's a mind shift change as well. This is extremely different as well. What changes the actual math? Lowering your dependent on what, really like truly lowering what you're dependent on does more for your freedom than raising what you earn. Every small reoccurring obligations kind of carries a small little tax on your future choices. Every possession, subscription, every commitment, you don't really need, it quietly is renting space in your life. Now, it's easy to say, okay, cut out those things and stuff like that, but it's more looking at things in a different level, what does freedom mean to me personally? I think, again, we're always going along, I don't mind paying for this, doing this because the payoff is in the future. Having this different mindset right off the bat, you start looking at things around you completely differently. I honestly used to believe, waiting for waiting for that in the future was the responsible choice. After all, everybody else is doing it. Work, put in your time, put in the reps. It's all worth it in the end. You get the golden watch. It's all worth it. Life starts then. You get to have all that freedom. And I was wrong about that. Waiting felt safe because it postponed the fear of acting without the guarantee. big difference. And this illusion of a guarantee, what is the guarantee, never really comes. And I think this is becoming increasingly more clear for so many people, especially in their late 40s and stuff, that have been putting in some decades already and starting to look, hey, wait a minute, this is not adding up. I don't see how also magically going to reach this when it's retirement time. So that guarantee didn't really come for me, and I don't think it really comes for a lot of people. I've watched and chased it, and the people who actually, like, I really watch people that chase it, and I look at the value of this, the value of the life they're living in the moment, and actually near the end as well, like when they're getting closer to that. And I've noticed this, the people who actually get free are the ones who stop waiting for permission for, for a number, for this somehow magic number, for this unwritten rule of what you need to do, how we're all supposed to follow be the sheep and be on this system. And then freedom now means more building a life you don't need to escape from. You can shift into, it doesn't require this, magical windfall, a retirement sort of date, a debt-free kind of milestone, because like I said earlier, the goalpost keeps moving. It requires making choices today that keep your obligations small enough that you're never trapped by them, that they don't control you, you control them. And that's available at any level of income. It really is. It was available to me long before I thought it actually was. And truly, it really was. If somebody told me this years and years ago when I was facing everything, I thought there's absolutely no way. There's just no way I can make this work. And yet I have. I'm living proof. And I tell you right now, if I would hear my own words back then, I would have he doesn't know what he's talking about. Not a chance. And when you can start looking at it that way, making that little mental shift, it's a huge shift. You're not renting your present moment for a future that may just never come. You get to start designing, a freedom today. Stop waiting for that milestone to give you permission. Stop waiting for this magic number to give you permission. Start looking at, the different options that are available, and stop comparing. This is another huge one. You don't need to compare to anything. You don't need to compare to anybody else. This is another struggle that a lot of people have. They think that they're stuck in the system because they're comparing it to what everybody else is doing. Well, everybody else is doing sort of, it's like if everybody's following along the same line, that's the wrong path. Still doesn't make it right. It's just because everybody else is doing it. Sometimes the smallest structural change you can make now, this week, write it down. Leave a comment if you think you're going to be stuck, or if you really want to change. That is a psychological break, a psychological change right there. It makes your brain start thinking, okay, thinking of a different outcome. And if you don't want to leave a comment in here, do this at home. Write it down. Just write something down. And that alone is giving it's a pattern interrupt. Bottom line, the smallest structural change you can make today can be more valuable than a 5-year plan that you keep postponing into the future. And I'm living proof. Trust me, I would have never thought this was possible. Absolutely not. I had a game plan. I was going to do this at 65. I ended up having to do it 15 years earlier. And a lot of people nowadays are getting faced with early retirement, being forced out. And even if you're not being forced out, you're seeing that the math is not quite right. It's kind of broken. You're getting closer. When I say closer, even 10 years away is kind of close. When you've put in previous decades and you say, hey, wait a minute, I don't have this huge bank account. Where is this going to come from? How is this life magically going to change? More and more people are feeling this pressure and structure. And these little changes make huge differences. This is what this is all about. This is what this channel is about. There are other ways. If you like this kind of videos, by all means, you know what to do. Follow along, leave comments. I do like engaging. Watch for the next one, and everybody take care. Thanks for joining in, folks.